Moving swiftly on, one of the things I wanted to do when I was chairing this conference this year was to bring back the Service Desk Institute into the size of fold. We haven't had the SDI at this conference for a number of years, and it's really my pleasure to not only have them back in the exhibition for the last 3 days, but to now introduce you to David Wright from the SDI, who's going to talk about their latest Service Desk initiative they're performing. So please give a round of applause for David Wright.
Thank you, guys. Am I on? Can I be heard? Yes, I can. Well, this presentation is nowhere near as good as that one, right, for a start. So, I think I'm set up to fail from beginning, to be honest. But wasn't that brilliant?
You've got no HDMI input.
Yes, this is that side. Or somewhere. Oh, you haven't got the cable, have you?
No.
Ah, okay. Well, that's not a great start. We'll just hang about, I think. Yeah, I love all that stuff. It's brilliant. We do a lot of that in our conference, but not as good as that. It's great to see some brilliant minds talking about that. So hopefully we'll have one come up shortly. Brilliant. Sorry, man. Out of interest, any SDI members in the room? Brilliant. Anybody who's gone through certification? Brilliant. Good. Good stuff. So hopefully, will that change over automatically? Brilliant. Fabulous. Thank you. So yeah, thanks guys. Thanks for the chance to join you today. And it's really great to be here. So thanks for staying. I know it's been a long 3 days by the sounds of things, which is pretty cool. My name is David Wright. I'm the Chief Value and Innovation Officer. Made it myself, that title, which I think is pretty cool, at the Service Desk Institute. And my role there really is about values to create, uncover, curate, develop value and value propositions for us and our customers as well, and for our members and non-members as well, our community. So it's really about owning value, it's about driving value, creating value, and tracking industry innovation. I joined 5 years ago from industry, so I've got 20 years experience in business process and IT outsourcing. I'm passionate about Service Desk. I'm passionate about the value that service desks offer an organization. I'm passionate about the delivery of service excellence. So this presentation, it's usually about 45 minutes, 50 minutes, so I've got to cut it down a lot. I'm Welsh, so I talk really quickly, right? So please bear with me. If you can't understand anything, just throw something. It'll be fine. I'll stop and maybe you can slow down a bit. So today we're going to look at why high-performance service desks are high-performance service desks. But before we do that, we're going to take a look at some unique industry data, performance data, to establish where the best performing desks actually sit in industry and sector. Before that, I want to explain how we got the data. And that's through the SDI Service Desk Certification Program, and initially talk about where that comes from, essentially what it's based on, which is SDI's Global Best Practice Standard for Service Desk. And as we've recently updated, just give you a bit of a small little glimpse of what we've done to update as well. Okay, so we'll take a quick look then at SDI's Global Best Practice Standard for Service Desk. What is it? Well, yeah, it's exactly what it says, really. It's a best practice standard for service desk and IT support. It's globally recognized, it's open source, it's free. You can go online and download that from the SDI website, and you can use that in any way you want in service. It's been created with the support of industry experts, leading IT best practice organizations, practitioners, trainers, consultants, service management, software developers, the whole bundle really. The standard complements ITIL and ISO 20000, a few other as well. We've got some 9,000 in there, some sort of 27,000 as well. And it provides a set of clear, measurable benchmarks for service desk operations, many of which aren't actually in those either, which is quite interesting. So what does the SDI Best Practice Standard do? Well, essentially, it contextualizes best practice for the service desk practice, providing information on how to apply that in an operationally in a service desk. And this is the latest version of the best practice standard. This is what it looks like. This is version 8. This was released in March 2019. It was refreshed to incorporate some of the changes in ITIL and ISO 20000 and the impact of new technology, new ways of working on the service desk as well. We also tried to remove any ambiguity that may have been in previous versions and ensure that the criteria that was in there has clear purpose. There's purpose and there's a consistent theme of continual improvement throughout the standard as well. And we certainly think It's the most comprehensive version yet. There are 9 concepts, all right? I want you to remember that if you would. These are 9 concepts that make up the standard and the number of relating criteria in each concept as well. So they cover leadership, policy and strategy, people management, resources, process and procedures, managing employee satisfaction, managing customer experience, management information and performance results, and corporate social responsibility, okay? So just see if you can remember those as we go through the next few slides. You can also see there some of the changes between version 7 and version 8. So we've now got 138 criteria in total. That's a net increase of 6 criteria. And in the main, that's a mix of new criteria, that's a mix of removed criteria, and criteria that we've moved to realign with other concepts as well, and a slight name change in social responsibility. These are some of the key changes in version 8. Now, I haven't got time to go through them all, but I'll cover a few of the key ones maybe. So in leadership, we've added leadership skills, and that's to promote a progressive organizational approach to enabling modern leaders in an organization. So that's really about culture setting. It's about creating the right cultures. We've also added service desk management competencies as well. Again, focusing very heavily on culture setting and nurturing the desired behaviors and skills. We've added tools and collaboration to resources, and we've recognized obviously the move to a more agile and more socialized approach to inter-team and cross-practice collaboration and sharing through collaboration platforms. We've also added optimization and automation as a criteria, along with modernization and transformation as criteria as well. We've added customer profiling, and that's really to encourage organizations to explore and develop a more progressive approach to understanding their end user community and the customer journey. We've added some problem management performance metrics in as well, some criteria to measure the value of problem management as a process. And there's also new criteria as well supporting mental health and emotional well-being, which obviously is a very positive addition. From an Untitled 4 perspective, I don't know if you can see that, but from an Untitled 4 perspective, you can also map the criteria directly and indirectly to the Untitled 4 practices, which is really interesting actually, because what this can help you do essentially is develop the service desk practice as a practice and provide guidance on how a service desk practice could engage with other practices in the organization. I think that's pretty cool. We've also started to look at how we can sort of map this to other frameworks as well. And when we talk about the best practice standard as a whole, in its entirety, the 2 key dominating practices there are obviously 2 and 28, there's continual improvement, and the service desk. But this version, I think, more than any other version, provides a model for best practice that can also be scaled across an organization as well to encourage a consolidated approach to service management as support services converge in an organization and in an enterprise service management environment as well, which is again, pretty cool. Okay, so we're going to have a quick look at service desk certification. Again, all just context setting for the data that we'll see a little bit later. So service desk certification, well, that's a certification program where organizations are audited against the best practice standard. It's specifically designed to certify the capability and quality of service desk and IT support. It's an acknowledgement that a company's service desk operation meets global industry standards and indicates compliance with best practice. The program acts as an indicator for service management maturity and capability. It identifies key areas for improvement and development. So it also acts as a driver for continuous improvement as well and offers the opportunity to adopt, adapt, or align with industry best practice. From an Untitled 4 perspective again, which is pretty cool, I think, personally, it also aligns quite nicely to the guiding principles. So if you look at each of the stages there, at assessment, start where you are, focus on value. As you progress through certification, progress iteratively, work holistically, collaborate, again, focus on value. And as you go through the surveillance audits, it's about optimization and improvement, again, with a focus on value. So again, that's quite cool. Actually, I did make a tongue-in-cheek sort of a point to the guys internally the other day that actually, sort of we were doing Untitled 4 before Untitled 4 was Untitled 4. Because value was everything we've always talked about. My title is Chief Value Officer. So that was really cool. So yeah, we were doing Untitled 4 before Untitled 4. So this is the certification rating system, or a scoring mechanism. So when we look at the data next, this is what the data is based on. Okay? So to achieve certification, an organization must achieve a rating of 2.3 in each of the concepts that we saw earlier, and a minimum rating of 2.5 overall to become certified. If you can't do that, if you don't do that, then you're not certified. It's not easy, as some of the guys will probably testify in the room. Certification is not easy. And to achieve it, it's a very comprehensive and robust certification process. So the organizations who have achieved certification have really earned it and demonstrated some key words there about behaviors. So demonstrated care for the staff, the service, their customers, their commitment to continual improvement and dedication to best practice. Okay, that's the sort of pre-bit done, I think. So as a result of the Service Desk Certification Program, we have access to a considerable amount of data, quite a lot of data actually, that we'll look at now. Now this is the data in related to the rating model that we saw earlier, and it's concept specific as well. Now I have had to take some of the findings out because of the time on this session, right? So I've taken quite a bit out, but I think it still offers some information, some pointers to where the higher performance service tests sit in sector and industry as well. So now what you'll see is each of the concepts listed in a radar style chart, listing ratings from 2 to 4. We don't see anything under 2.3 certification. They don't certify. So anything sort of under that is pointless. So 2 to 4. The higher rating, the higher the capability and maturity, and the higher performing the service desk is. So there's the first set of data, which is the average benchmark at certification. And we use this data as a benchmark because it's the first time the physical evidence is required in the audit process to verify that an organization has met the requirements of certification. So that's the average benchmark of all organizations that have become certified through the program. That's the same data, exactly the same data there, but in graph form. And you can see from that, organizations who have become certified, leadership is one of the highest rating concepts, which probably makes sense because you'd expect a strong forward-thinking leadership group to commit to something like service desk certification. Social responsibility is also one of the highest ratings there, seen in the overall benchmark. Again, a marker for the responsible, considerate, ethical types of organizations that we see enter the program. It's really good to see there managing customer satisfaction, managing employee satisfaction rather, as one of the top 3, which is pretty cool. Again, an indicative of organizations who understand the importance of staff engagement and staff motivation. And by far the lowest rated score you can see there, sticking out like a sore thumb actually, is management information and performance results. Still a significant issue for many, many service desks. What to measure, how to measure, how do we get value out of that data? All still questions that some of the better service desks wrestle with at this stage of the program. Really interesting, very interesting again to see there as well that managing customer experience is the second lowest at rating at certification. So again, still a challenge for many organizations, many service desks, and backed up by that data. So that's the average benchmark for all service desks at certification stage. We're going to split that down now into sector. And as you see there, 51% of organizations who have become certified are public sector organizations. I think we knew that was going to happen, if I was honest, but it was interesting to see how close it was. And they lead just over 47% of private sector organizations who become certified. Just 2% of not-for-profits have progressed to certification stage. Now, that's not enough data really to compare directly with public or private sector as we go through the next few slides, but it does have some effect on the average benchmark. So you could say, from that data, you could say, well, public sector lead the way, really, in wanting to highlight their commitment to service excellence, their dedication to best practice, and continual service improvement. Now, this chart, that shows the difference in ratings between public and private sector. Public sector there in blue and private sector in red. Now, you can see there that private sector, on the whole, do better at certification, leading public sector in 7 of the 9 concepts. Now, that's quite a finding. Private sector leads in 7 of the 9 concepts. Public sector, however, has fared slightly better than private sector in leadership. However, it is very, very close. So you can take from that the leadership, the capabilities in both sectors are very, very similar. Public sector have also fared better in the resource concept, which is interesting, which in the main relates to the service management tools available and how those are used in a service to support the customer and how the tools are put together, how they're integrated and what value they create. The biggest gap, and the biggest gap by far actually, seen between the two, is the policy and strategy concept, where private sector shows a distinct advantage over public sector. So even though leadership in both sectors is strong, the ability to turn strategy into reality is more challenging in public sector. Now, this could mean the public sector finds it more challenging to align strategic objectives. We certainly see less strategic planning in public sector service desks, less stakeholder engagement, less financial management experience, and less service desk strategic value. Now, if we add the average benchmark to that, we get this. So the purple, I hope you can see that, the purple sort of line there is the average benchmark. So if we look at the concepts policy and strategy, people and management, managing employee satisfaction, managing customer experience, management information, performance results, and social responsibility, public sector generally scores lower than the overall average, whereas private sector generally scores higher. And in fact, the data shows the public sector as a whole scores on average 0.05 lower than the average benchmark, and private sector score on average as a whole 0.10 higher than the average benchmark. So there is a disparity there between the two sector types. Okay, so that's sector. We're going to drill down a little bit more, and we're going to split that into industry. And as you see there, which is pretty cool, I think 21% of certified organizations are or have been education organizations. Isn't that pretty cool? I think it is. It's really interesting, actually. So we do see, a very positive higher education certification engagement, which again, when you look at the commitment to this type of program, says an awful lot for the higher education community. I think you guys, have a very positive influence in the service desk community, which is great. The remaining industry engagement groups are in order: managed services, health, local and central government, and banking and finance. Now you'll see another section there of 20%. That represents a smaller group of 9 industries. And we've grouped those together as another industry because there's really insufficient data to represent each of those 9 industries. So we're sort of using that as a test group, really. Okay, now we look at the largest data set, so the 5 main industries. So that's, as you probably can see there, the red line, managed services, they come out as the best rated industry in a number of concepts. In fact, they come out as an industry top in 6 of 9 of the concept, which is quite a lot. But I think that makes sense because managed service providers, core business is managed services. So they simply have to be as good as they can be to survive in a very competitive market. However, they didn't come out top in 2 very key concepts, namely managing customer experience and managing employee satisfaction, which is interesting because employee satisfaction and customer experience are intrinsically linked. So that's really interesting when you consider that from a service perspective, what it means to the customer and for the staff working there as well. Local and central government, well, they come a really, really close second to managed services, which may surprise a few people. They achieved the highest average rating in managing employee satisfaction, and by some way, to be honest. Banking and finance top the management of managing the customer experience rating, but struggle with processes and procedures, and that's about definition, ownership, adherence, governance. And they also didn't fare particularly well in policy and strategy concept. Health fares the lowest in resources, again, about tools and tools effectiveness. And health also is the lowest rating group for managing the customer experience and social responsibility. Again, really interesting when you think about that culturally as part of service. And education as an industry, well, yeah, it's the highest scoring in social responsibility, but it does have some of the lowest ratings as an industry group as a whole. So that's, managed service there. They certainly lead the way, but it is very close. So if we lay over the top of that the average benchmark, we get this. The black mark there is the average benchmark. On the whole, as we've mentioned, managed services and local and central government, they outperform the average benchmark. So managed services as an industry scores 0.14 better than the average benchmark. Local and central government as an industry scores on average 0.09 better than the average benchmark. So that's quite close. Banking, health and education as industries score on average 0.05, 0.09 and 0.15 lower than the average benchmark. So you can see, again, there's quite a marked difference between those and how different industries perform against the average benchmark as well. This slide shows some of the best performing organizations in each industry. The black shape there is the average benchmark, and the red shapes are the best performing service desks in each industry. And you can see there how close the best managed service desk, the best managed service and the best local and central government organizations are. And when you compare that to the average benchmark, both organizations have done very, very well, actually, and very similar results. You can also see here the best banking and finance organizations performed, again, to a very high standard. And these are the best education and health organizations. They fared a little less well, but still generally above the benchmark. Okay, that's a lot to take in, isn't it? I appreciate that, so thank you for listening to that. That's the data and the analysis. It's a cut-down version. There's more. There's more, believe it or not. So it's probably in our interest that there's only 30 minutes, but still hopefully very interesting reading. So let's move on to some of those best practices that we talked about earlier, which believe it or not, we've already assessed. So the 9 best practices playing out as the 9 concepts in the best practice standard that we've already seen. So the highest performing service desks perform highly against the 9 concepts. But we're going to break that down a little bit. We're going to break those down into some of the smaller component parts. Component parts where higher performing service desks do better than lower performing service desks. So we see that the high performing service desks have very, very well-defined strategies. Strategies that's aligned with its own organizations, aligned with the business goals and objectives. It's all aligned. And this is how some of the better service desks actually align all that. And you can see here, for example, that a defined vision and mission statements are aligned with critical success factors and underpinning KPIs. Now, this obviously means it's easier to communicate, to understand, to deliver against, and it's measurable as well, along with being an effective way of articulating all that value back into the business. Some of the better organizations we've seen have used this type of approach to join up silo areas, areas that wouldn't even speak to each other, to create context, meaning and purpose for the whole organization. And I've done that really well, which leads on to the next one actually. So the best service desks, they absolutely create context. They intimately understand their customers, service impact and service urgency. They understand why they exist and create knowledge, business knowledge and awareness, context around that. They really understand service consequences. They really, really get it. And they support that in some of the organizations we've seen by cross-functional buddying and shadowing, not just in the service desk, but outside the service desk as well, across the organization, IT and non-IT. They're out there, they're engaging with the business, meeting the user community, so they get a real feel of an understanding for what the end user needs are, the department roles, the needs, the risks, along with the added benefits of upskilling between technical teams. And culturally, they embrace the creation and sharing of knowledge. In these organizations, knowledge is a cultural thing. In the best service desks in business, invest. You can't have a great service without a reliable infrastructure and infrastructure investment. They also invest as well in the working environment to create the right environments for people and teams to work most effectively together. Isn't that simple? An environment to help people work together better. But some of the best organizations that we see really heavily invest in that. The best service desks employ and develop great people. That includes how they recruit. They recruit really, really well. Some of these organizations recruit incredibly well. They delegate really well. They coach, they empower, they create ownership and accountability. They create transparency. They create an emotional connection between people, process, technology, and service, resulting in trust, autonomy, sharing, and the right cultures. They also create a customer advocacy. And is seen as a trusted partner. Brilliant service desks engage with the end user community through multiple channels, not just one or two. They're active, they're visible in the community. They employ comprehensive customer experience programs and enable their users to be more. They keep their promises, they're transparent. They use emotional intelligence and service compassion to create service consistency and add value at every opportunity. They have great service governance in place, obviously, as you'd expect, best practice, frameworks, methodologies, KPIs, SLAs, OLAs, reporting, relationship management, benchmarking, risk management, supply management, the list goes on. And defined, effective, repeatable processes as well. And they engage in things across the organization like service transition, configuration, asset management, and business continuity. They're engaged in all that. The best service desks are creative. They use reporting, data, and analysis to support continual improvement, using the data to create information and wisdom, and critically using that insight to create business foresight. In a brilliant service desk, CSI, again, is cultural. It's not just a nice to have. It's not a lip service. It's not a tick box somewhere that somebody sort of ticks every now and again. It's really cultural. It's part of the culture. And in these service desks, they actively listen to their user community. They network. They listen to stakeholders, their users, their staff, and they use that insight to challenge the norm. And absolutely, a brilliant service desk knows its numbers. There's strategic cost control, there's investment, there's ROI, there's efficiencies, there's managing financial opportunities and risks as well. They're lean, they remove waste, but without compromising on service excellence or their duty as an employer. And the final element here is a little bit special. Some of the best desks that we see in some of the better organizations have managed to combine all that to create absolute magic, some kind of service alchemy that creates cultures driven to succeed. You know, we all pretty much do the same thing, I think it's fair to say, in service desk, best practice, process, methodologies, tools, reporting. So it isn't so much about what they do in a high-performance service desk. The focus is more on how they do it. So based on what we've seen, If I was to make my final observations about working with high-performance service desks in great organizations, this is what I'd say they'd all have in common to some degree. Their orientation, their basic attitude, beliefs and behaviors are related to people, teams, their customers and service. Principally, they're altruistic. They care unselfishly for the welfare of their staff and their customers. They recruit really well. They either are becoming or are preferred employers. And they bring in the right type of people, the right fit, the right caliber of staff to create and maintain a brilliant service culture. There's a lot of definition in these organizations which creates context and clarity and awareness and understanding of what, how and why. An explanation of how to be part of an organization. And when you're part of that organization, what's expected for you as well. They empower their staff. They promote autonomy, but with clear accountability, which helps to create ownership. They communicate openly, transparently, which helps to create advocacy for both staff and customers, building a belief to encourage confidence, trust, and a feeling of protection. And that's a big word, community. They create communities, which in help turns to shape the experience of being part of that environment into something which ends up creating recognition, respect, innovation, and change. An open, free-thinking experience for the employee that absolutely radiates from the people who work there and is absolutely felt by the customer as well. Some of the best service desks that we see probably are probably some of the most human places you could imagine. And they've sort of managed to create willing advocates, eager to provide solutions and work together, not only in the service desk or IT, but across the organization as well. And this has helped some of the best performing desks to create an emotional connection between what they do, why they do it, and the way they do it. That helps to create a community, belonging, and self-actualized people and teams. We see the best organizations have these building blocks in place. They have them understood, but critically practice and use all that to encourage, recognize, and reward the resulting behaviors. And it's those behaviors that help to deliver the business strategy, the business goals, and business outcomes. And that's just not from a staff perspective, but that's also from the perspective of a customer as well, and supports the creation of inspirational, absolutely inspirational customer experiences, as some of the very best service desks we see actually do. Okay, that's it. That was quick, wasn't it? That's pretty much it, right? It wraps up this session. There's a lot more information online if you're interested in seeing the certification model and stuff. Hope some of that made sense. Hope the data was interesting. Normally I get at least 10% of the audience sort of snoozing off, especially after a busy night. So thank you for listening to that. I'd just like to quickly mention these organizations for showing the care, the commitment, and the dedication for becoming part of the Service Desk certification program. So I think it would be great if there's any, I don't know if there's anybody here, but I know there's a couple. So it'd be great for maybe a quick round of applause and any questions, Tim, if there's time. No questions?
Hi David, I'm
Hi.
from the University of Edinburgh, and I just wanted to say that it was kind of echoing what you said about ITIL 4. We've been working with the SDI for about 4 or 5 years now. We've been through certification,
Yeah.
but the work that we did with your colleagues and the certification programme has actually resulted for us in creating an ITIL team and a service management team that is now focusing on using the things that we've learned from the SDI, USISA and other groups. And it is a really valuable experience, I think, for any organisation to go through, not only just for the process things, but the staff morale has been driven.
Incredible. I'm lucky because before I joined SDI, I was a customer. So I went through the same process. So I ordered it, but I've actually been through it as well. So I know it intimately. And you're absolutely right. The emotional... I don't know what the word is, but the outcome for staff is incredible. You know, I've had staff, people asking me, can I put this on my CV? It's like, well, yeah, of course you can. You can do anything you want, you know. But yeah, no, there's great feedback, really good feedback. I think what I'm tending to see is that as automation kicks in, as AI, all that wonderful stuff happens, and we start using different channels, I think we'll start to see the convergence of support in an organization across siloed areas that we wouldn't have seen before. So these types of things, as you've done, you've taken that out into the organization, to the service management organization, these things really can scale, you know? These practices can scale out of IT and into anywhere you want, which is really good. And I think that's what we'll see, the convergence of support in organizations. Good.
We haven't got time for more questions. Are you going to be around at lunchtime again?
Yeah.
Is there any more? David, we've got a bit of a break now. If you want to catch David in the break, if not, it'll be at lunchtime. But thank you again.
No worries, thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you.